the Children of God, later known as the Family International, a cult born from the ashes of the 1960s counterculture, promising love, salvation, and a new way to live. But beneath the surface, something far darker festered, a nightmare that would span decades, leaving scars on those who survived and those who didn't. David Berg, a self-proclaimed prophet, emerges from the Jesus movement, a wave of Christian revival sweeping through the disillusioned youth of the late 60s. He preaches an alternative gospel, one that shuns traditional churches, embraces communal living, and above all elevates him to the status of God's chosen messenger. His followers abandon their lives, their families, their pasts, and they become the children of God. As the movement grows, Berg's teachings become increasingly unhinged. He believes sex is the highest form of worship, not just for adults, but for everyone. His followers are expected to use intimacy as a recruitment tool, a practice he calls flirty fishing. Women in the cult are sent out to seduce men under the guise of evangelism. Some marry their recruits, others bring them into the fold through secretive transactional encounters. It's all done in the name of God, or at least Berg's version of him. Berg communicates through Moe letters, long, rambling, sexually explicit screeds that dictate every aspect of his followers' lives. His words are law, and those who dare question him excommunicated, cut off from their families, their homes, and the only world they know. Fear keeps them compliant. Isolation keeps them loyal. The most chilling aspect of the group, the children. Born into the cult, raised without autonomy, treated as divine vessels rather than human beings. Many of them, later testimonies reveal, were subjected to horrific abuse. They were told their bodies were not their own, that love meant obedience. That obedience meant surrendering to whatever was asked of them. Berg's teachings ensured that no part of their childhoods remained untouched by his influence. By the late 70s, law enforcement begins to take notice. Allegations surface. Former members speak out. Countries ban the group outright. But Berg and his followers adapt. They change their name, they go underground, they destroy evidence, and somehow they survive. Berg himself spent much of his later life in hiding, avoiding law enforcement as allegations of child abuse and sexual misconduct grew louder. He communicated through secretive letters, reinforcing his power over his followers. Some members trapped within the cult had no idea he was even still alive. While flirty fishing was eventually phased out in the late 1980s, the damage had already been done. Thousands of women had been used as tools of recruitment, many left emotionally and physically scarred. Berg justified it all, claiming that it was part of God's plan. Then comes Ricky Rodriguez, a boy born into this nightmare. His mother, Karen Zerby, is Berg's second in command. Groomed to be the future of the family, Ricky is raised in a world where nothing is private, nothing is safe. His childhood is documented, shared within the cult as an example of Berg's teachings in action. Ricky was just one of many Davidito children chosen to be the next generation of cult leadership, handpicked by Berg and raised under his most extreme teachings. The abuse he suffered was not an anomaly. It was a design, a blueprint for how the next wave of members would live. As he grows older, Ricky begins to understand the truth. He escapes. He tries to build a life outside the family, but the past haunts him. The nightmares, the rage, the memories that won't die. He realizes he'll never be free until he gets revenge. In 2005, he lures Angela Smith, one of his former caretakers, a high-ranking member of the family, to his apartment. She was there during his childhood. She was part of it. He stabs her repeatedly. The rage spills out in blood, in screams, and years of suffering released in a single violent act. Hours later, overwhelmed by the weight of what he's done and what was done to him, Ricky Rodriguez dies by suicide. His final words, captured in a chilling video before his rampage, lay everything bare. He wanted justice. He wanted the world to know what had happened behind the closed doors of the family. But justice never came. Even after Berg's death in 1994, Karen Zerby took over leadership, continuing to control the cult's teachings and members. To this day, Zerby has never faced charges for her role in the abuse. Survivors of the family continue to fight for justice. some of them still seeking accountability for the horrors they endured. The Family International still exists today. They have rebranded, changed their teachings, distanced themselves from their past, but they are still here. Survivors continue to tell their stories. Some escape, some never do. And David Berg, he died in 1994, never answering for his crimes, never facing the consequences of what he created. Despite countless lawsuits and criminal investigations, very few members of the Family International have faced legal repercussions. Many of the children raised in the cult continue to struggle with PTSD, depression, and the psychological scars of their upbringing. The children of God promised love. Instead, it left a trail of broken lives, stolen childhoods, and wounds that may never heal.